All right, so we are live. So this is really a good test. See if we get any attention, see if anything's going on here. But we're basically just going to talk about innovation and personal stories on innovation. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy. Let me pull up the chat here so I can see.
Yeah, it's a big topic, man. Innovation, everybody talks about it. Everybody thinks they're doing it, but when you look at it, how do you truly define innovation is just crazy. Um,
I think that's probably a great way to start off a way. So what is innovation to you, just in general?
yeah, innovation to me is doing things that haven't been done before, right? That haven't been tested. Think outside the box. A lot of people speak about innovation, and it's pretty much mirroring what other people have done. And it's
Yeah.
great to, I think, leverage, why would you reinvent the wheel if it's already been invented? But the idea is, for you to be truly innovative, you have to do something that other people are not doing. If you're just jumping on the bandwagon, then that's not innovation, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a quote I recently came across. I can't remember who it's attributed to, but stop doing dumb things faster. And I think that's the same thing with innovation. If you keep following the crowd, you're not innovating. Like if Apple did something brand new and then you do what is doing, it's not innovation. You're a follower. Maybe a fast follower, but you're still a follower. And that's a lot of what I've seen throughout my entire career is everyone wants to do what someone else is already doing successfully and they want to innovate successfully like the other companies are. Well, you're not innovating if you're just doing what they just did successfully. That's not really how it goes. But I'm kind of curious, you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, what's going on in your career, what are you up to? Where do you
Yeah, just
work?
what's that?
Where do you work?
Where do I work? Man, I'm still trying to figure that out. Right now I'm working from home, so which is still a little bit interesting to see, what's happening. But yeah, at Active Ops, man, been here a little less than a year. We've been with the insurance industry for over 13 years. I manage large claim operations. So a lot of what you're talking about from an innovation standpoint, I saw a lot of continuous improvement initiatives, process reengineering, RPA, machine learning, and it's all great. And before I tell you what I do, I just want to piggyback off of a comment that you made, which was very good. Is if you're doing something that other people have done, it's fantastic, right? You want to innovate, but the idea is everybody has their own processes, everybody has their own nuances, and if you are going to take somebody else's process and engineer it with your process, which is different, it doesn't work, right? You have to make sure you're catering to your audiences, whether it's business units or whoever it is. So I've been at Active Ops, as I said, less than a year. I've been loving it. I'm helping organizations figure out employee productivity and utilization. So before employees get burned out and after they're sitting and waiting for work, how do you optimize the resources and optimizing resources of human as well as robots? So, we talk a lot about technology improvement. However, nobody's really watching what's happening with the robots except for some IT person
Yeah.
that's looking at it to make sure it's not broken down, right? So we help optimize the efficiency into that, and ensuring that insurance world, banking, financial sector, all over have the ability to manage their people more effectively and to tie a productivity measure to it.
There's a lot there. It's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that you've been doing the current role less than a year. That's incredible. It's making a lot of progress in such a short amount of time. I know we've talked before, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is you talk about employee productivity and especially with the workforce of the future and all these buzzwords going around about working from home. It's productivity and management and seeing what's going on, what people are doing. And I was like, first time I saw what your company was doing is like, how do I get this for me? Like, is there just a personal license so I can see, my productivity? I can't imagine why it's not already been done the way you're doing it right now. I mean, just from uh, everybody that I know who is a high performance type or trying to be a high performance type, we're all obsessed with productivity. Like when I started, I remember I literally had my morning routine down on a note card with, I'd like time it, like, all right, how long brush my teeth, eat breakfast, like how long's everything, take, and what can I do that makes me more effective. So then, when I'm not working, I can just sit back and relax instead of, you know, freaking out about the other 10 things I should have done today, but I didn't do. What are some of the, and so for me, it seems like it's common sense, but what are some of the pushbacks or the obstacles that you're seeing with that side of innovation, when you're speaking to clients in the market?
See, the challenge that I see in being on the carrier side, and I can see where they're coming from, right? And the challenge is everybody wants to innovate, and everybody wants to think about how do you improve process, people, and the system itself, right? Which is all great, and you have to do that. But what a lot of people forget is you still have to manage day to day. How do you manage day to day while you have this long-term vision of automation, you have long-term vision of process reengineering. And that's where there's a big kind of shortfall, right? People prioritize that more so than how do you manage your existing workforce. So when you think about that, like you're talking about, desktop analytics is what I think you're referring to. Is like, hey, I wish I knew how my time was spent. So data is everything, right? There's, especially with the hybrid work, people don't have visibility into what's happening within their organization, or individuals don't have any idea into how their day is being distracted, right? How do you take those distractions, those meetings, are they really effective? Through desktop analytics, you can see a lot of that information and make solid business decisions. I'll give you an example that I was part of an organization that was implementing very large transformational project for payment automation and digitizing the payment platform. Although that's the future, you have to get there eventually. Hopefully, we'll end up trading and sending people cryptocurrency. But that's a long-term piece. What you have to realize is what is the biggest pain point right now. That's the pain point of 5 years, 10 years, and you should start to work at it. But if you're investing very heavy efforts into that and not simplifying things such as people having to write letters on a Word document, or people spending hours upon hours of reviewing documents. You and I talk about AI all the time, is like, how do you use the technology that's existing to simplify your processes while you're working towards innovation? So you can't just shut a blind eye to it, because what ends up happening in reality is you automate something, you improve something, and you cut down, using Lean Six Sigma, and you're cutting down a lot of the work. What you don't realize is there are two independent departments that are working at this. So you have the business unit who is complaining that this team is coming in, looking at our processes, they don't even know what's happening, and they are engineering it. And on the other end, you have these experts that are coming in, and they're saying, we've done this so many times and we can do it for you as well. Well, but in reality, when that automation happens, when that process alignment happens very effectively, you end up having additional work that comes on the back end that was not considered, right? Because every process is different. So our biggest focus is, based off of methodology and saying, look, we'll help you attain the productivity levels that you're looking for and give you a realistic forecasting on what your workforce should look like. So it's not a piece of tech that we just drop off and say, good luck. It's more of a guided journey, and here's what's happening. And there are certain cases where you may actually need more people. It's just having that visibility into saying, where do you need people? Where do you have capacity? My challenge as a leader was every time I needed staff, it was 9 months too late. Because by the time I started the hiring process, approval process, interviews, training, I received those people 9 months later. And now I no longer had this need, but now I have people. So I have large capacity and lower need. And I'm not raising my hand and saying, hey, here, have 20 people. I'm telling them.
Because next time something comes up, it's another 9 months.
It's another 9 months. So you hold on to those resources. But as an organization, instead of working in these silos, what if you collectively work together and say, hey, Matt, I have 10 resources. I know they have capacity. Let me lend that to you So that way tomorrow when I need those resources, you can share some of your resources as long as you have capacity and or we utilize those resources effectively.
Oh, wait, that's such a good story. And Lance, thanks for dropping by and commenting. Appreciate it. So I was on the new app, first time ever, Clubhouse, I mentioned to you just a couple days ago. And I was speaking with, and anyone listening, get on Clubhouse. If you're a first mover, you're going to be the first people in communities. And this is a great example. I was speaking with some people from BCG, MIT, and heads of organizations. And there was the head of AI for Walmart. And we were talking about how exactly what Awais is talking about. Companies want to innovate a process and they don't know even the end-to-end process. So you want to come in, you want to change something and you don't even know what needs to be changed. And this individual, I can put him in the comments, I can't remember his name right now. This individual from Walmart, he said what he decided to do was he took himself and his data scientists, and when they wanted to innovate a process, they went out and they learned the process. They're on the warehouse floor. So you imagine the head of AI for one of the biggest companies in the world is out there looking at the people shuffling boxes and all these different processes to figure out what it is before he even tries to innovate. It's like everything takes so long. Even if you want to put in an AI solution that's going to automate all these things, it's going to take time. If you're going to add employees, 9 months it's not uncommon. And 9 months, what if you spend time, going through the entire process, 9 months later, hire Matt, and it's like, oh, it's such a great employee, and then turns out it's not. I mean, now you do another 9 months, or you go back to the other employees or the potential candidates. If they were good, they already have offers. So it's just this perpetual cycle of we want to keep doing things and we keep having these obstacles. And so that's really interesting with your technologies, being able to reduce the need for, constantly adding, reducing, moving staff. That's funny on the analytics side. Again, I don't understand why this isn't a bigger thing, because when like these apps for monitoring your phone and on your phone usage, I literally, as soon as I found out that was a thing, I downloaded it, and this was years ago, by the way, and I saw, oh my God, I'm checking social media like 30 times a day. And so being interested in productivity, I just deleted all my social media type stuff away from my personal phone. Or the phone that I'm using for work. And immediately I was like, wow, I'm getting so much more done. So I don't understand how there is, resistance to this kind of technology. But it's incredible. Do you have any other interesting stories or any specific interesting stories from, coming in, looking at these types of projects and someone was like, we don't want to do this because of X, Y, Z, and then you overcame that, or any other interesting stories from implementing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that comes to my mind is a personal story of where I was on the carrier side and I deployed a program. And, you spend so much money and time and effort into deploying, and at the C-suite, you're making these decisions of, do we want to bring in this new technology that's going to help our organization make better decisions and or reduce the time? So similar to that, I did the same thing, brought in new technology, amazing platform. But when I look at the usage of it, the usage was less than 5%. So you introduce these new technologies, and after the contract is signed, after it's done, nobody ever goes back to look at it from an evaluation standpoint, because what happens is all of those organizations, all of those softwares can give you reporting individually and say, this is what our usage is, this is how many people used it. But guess what? If the usage is low, they're not going to raise their hand and say, here's a report of X, Y, and Z. And there's hundreds of programs on computers, right? So we bring visibility into that and saying, you're putting such heavy investment into a platform. Instead of deploying it throughout your organization, why don't you concentrate it where it's being utilized the most, right? And or the other piece is, if you sunset an application and people are still going back to it and utilizing it in a way that's just reserved for security purposes and or compliance perspective, but people are still utilizing that more than anything else. So we see that.
Windows 7. Windows 7 has entered the chat. Sorry. I remember going through that and people were like still using Windows 7, even though it was like, 2007. It was like security problems everywhere. And people were like using old computers and plugging into the network physically so they could.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, because there's so many changes that happen in organizations, and people don't realize that there's not enough training to go along with that. And my organization, every organization, it's the same challenge, right? In saying, hey, we deployed this great product, great software, everybody should use it, and now you're just kind of scratching your head and saying, was it really worth the couple $1 million that I invested in that technology?
I've seen a lot of that as well. And I think part of that is the cultural education within a company's group, whether it's HR, whatever team or division you're interacting with and working with. I've seen many times a new technology is brought in, and it could be this perfect silver bullet solution to one of their internal obstacles, and then people don't adopt it. Or I've even seen projects that were vastly successful be sabotaged internally by people, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to automate that. I don't want to innovate with that because they see it as, a threat to their job or to their career. And in fact, it's just because they don't really understand the technology and how it's going to help them. Have you seen any successful, change cultural shifts internally around, those types of situations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because any new technology, any new change brings in like a level of anxiety, right? So we see that when we get deployed. But I tell you that once after our deployment, we get like our implementation coaches will always tell you that they're getting hugs and kisses at the end of the implementation, and after, like, when they're doing the health checks to seeing how things are working. And the reason for that is, Matt, as I said, we focus on productivity. So the desktop analytics is one piece of it. The other part of it is, right now, there's a huge challenge of employee burnout, right? People are working longer hours. Initially, when the pandemic happened, everybody was working longer hours because they were scared, right? They didn't want to lose their job. So they had to make sure that they were the top performers, so they were not the first to go. So this whole concept of corporate America thinking that, hey, productivity from home is great, right? Which it was. And I think organizations turn a blind eye to what that did to the time that people were dedicating. And it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, if you want to move up and you want to showcase, you got to be competitive and all that. However, that starts to wear down on you, right? That starts to have an impact on your personal life. And during the pandemic, there was nothing going on. You can't even go to the restaurant, forget anything else. Right? So people had time. Now we're going to see a different shift of, people that are working from home, their productivity levels are going to drop because they're going to work less, because they're going to look at their peers and say, hey, John goes in at 9 o'clock and is done at 5 o'clock. I no longer get an email from John after 5 o'clock. Why am I staying on? Why am I logging on the weekend, right? There's work-life balance comes in. So what we help define, Matt, is, there's this constant issue of, peaks and lows when it comes to work volumes that come in, right? So we help organizations maintain consistency, not by controlling what comes in, but we control, who you put in front of that work when it comes in. So people have a clear vision that there's a science behind how you're going to get the work completed. I ran large operation teams with BPOs as well as onshore staff, et cetera. And the biggest challenge was, after a certain point, when your queues never go down, it's just like, why are we even trying? Forget the SLAs. We're so far behind, and that morale goes down, the productivity goes down. But if you can have some clear expectations from people and say, here's, based off of my forecasting, here's what we need to accomplish today, and this is what is reasonable, and let's talk about that. And as people hit that, they feel a sense of, accomplishment, that they're challenged, that they're doing something effective. So we see that very often because people have a good balance of, that their peers are getting the same amount of work that they are, and they're being measured with the same expectation. And if they're doing complex work and all of that, we allow you to see the visibility into that as well. So it's strictly focused on productivity, not necessarily just on what they do. Because
that's such.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say
that's such an interesting concept, because also getting into, like the circadian rhythm and the way people operate. Some are just naturally more productive at different times of the day. So what if there's a specific time block, and I don't know, what if it's 12 to 3 that you're low productivity, and so you're with your kids or something instead, and then you work, from 3 to 8, as your second work block or something. There's just so much variability, and even monitoring this type of activity can actually make not just more productive but more effective in what you're doing. For example, my wife, she likes working at night. Like after 6 or 7 p.m. I'm brain dead. Like, no matter how hard I try, it doesn't matter. I'll drink like 3 cups of coffee and fall asleep, but I get up at 4 a.m. But by 7 p.m. I'm worthless. Whereas at 7 p.m. she's like sitting there doing complex, math formulas and all this stuff. I'm just like, what? Like, there's no way. So it's interesting. We're all different, and this type of technology, you're just tapping into this level of potential and productivity that historically has been ignored. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, and that brings up my last point is that, look, employee well-being, right? It's okay for employees. Like initially when the pandemic happened, my supervisors and managers, they were looking at people like on instant messengers. Oh my God, this person's been away for 2 hours,
Yeah.
And then they're only seeing that part of it and making judgments about that person, right? And not looking at it like similar to your wife. People do come back, right? They want to, people are loyal. So they're going to come back later part of the night and give you 2 extra hours because you were flexible, right? So instead of an 8-hour day, they're giving you 10 hours. But that's factoring into their, burnout rate. And as a manager, as a supervisor, you have these feelings about your people. That, oh my God, this person is not working as hard, but they're getting the work completed. So now you're thinking, are they really doing 8-hour work in 6 hours, or are they really, getting 8-hour work and done in 10 hours, right? I mean, it's just a really big challenge.
That's important.
There. Yeah.
If someone's doing 4 hours of work and has 10 hours of output, and someone's doing 10 hours of work and 4 hours of output, that's something that you need to look into as a leader or a manager. There's a lot of things that could be going on there, and you want to figure out what's up.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you see your most tech savvy, tenured people that know the technology can get work done much faster. But your newer folks, people who are not as tech savvy, right, tend to be a little bit slower with the processing of things, right? So you see this whole concept of, normally when there are high work volumes, you say everybody needs to work 10 hours a day, everybody needs to work 12 hours a day. So that person that's only giving you 4 hours of work and 8 hours of non-work, that person is also getting burned out, because now you've set the stage of you need to work 12 hours no matter what. So this person is like, hey, I'm getting paid, I'm getting overtime or whatever it is, incentive, but the person who's putting in 10 hours, right, of work time and 2 hours of non-work time, that person's also getting burned out. So you're seeing 2 elements of it. But if I have the capability of preventing the person who gets the work done in 4 hours and keep them for 8 hours and get 7 hours, 6 hours of productivity from them, instead of them working 12 hours and only giving me 4 hours of work time, right?
And I think recommend here, as we're wrapping up, a lot of this innovation stuff, actually, this is your copy that I got to mail out. Highly recommend anyone that watches this, if you're still watching. The Fourth Age goes into a bunch of these different innovations and talks about innovation all the way back from, the first hand axe all the way to the new age of artificial intelligence and automation and all these different types of things. And it talks about the cultural aspects and the impact to society and where it can go positively and negatively, and a whole bunch of different aspects about what we covered today. Highly recommend picking it up. Great read for any level of individual interested in technology. Are there any specific books that you're reading or you'd recommend, Wes?
Yeah, so we also have, as I said, operations methodology, and we have a book for that. I mean, I like leadership books are my go-to. I'll share my link with you, and we can post it on here for our book that we have.
Yeah,
But on that, I like leadership books, right? It's good to know how you lead people, especially when you're leading large operations. So my favorite is Monday Morning Leadership. I don't know if you've read it. It's one of the greatest books. It's probably 40 pages. It's a short read, but it covers everything when it comes to leadership, right? And how you attain high level of productivity. How do you engage your people at the emotional level? But more importantly, right, when you have that leadership lens, it allows you to see from the other aspect of how you connect with people and how do you drive them to give you the better outcome.
I read that in 2016, I believe. Monday morning mentorship, and highly recommend it. It's a light read, and because of that, anybody who is or will end up in a leadership role, a lot of great principles in there, and actual techniques and tactics you can take away from it. So I'll post your info in the comment section, everything. And where else can we find you? Where should we look for you? I know Clubhouse, but what else?
Yeah, no, I just got on to Clubhouse thanks to you. So I'm jumping on there. I think it's a great platform. I dropped in a couple of different conversations, and it's just phenomenal the amount of wealth of knowledge that's there. LinkedIn is the best way. You get to interact with me and go from there.
Outstanding, Awais. Really appreciate you jumping on. Hopefully somebody learned something that's helpful. I know Lance dropped a comment, said it was interesting, so we got one. Somebody learned something. Any parting comments or remarks?
No, thank you for having me on, Matt. I mean, this has been phenomenal. Keep up the great work.
Absolutely appreciate it. Have yourself a great weekend.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.